Have you ever noticed how your phone battery just doesn't last as long as it used to? You buy a brand new iPhone or Samsung, and for the first few months, it's incredible. You charge it overnight, unplug it in the morning, and it coasts through the entire day. Maybe even into the next morning if you're lucky. But then something changes. 6 months in, you're reaching for the charger by dinner time. A year later, you're carrying a power bank everywhere. 2 years in, and your phone's practically tethered to the wall. And you're thinking, what happened? I've been doing everything right. I charge it every night to 100%. I never let it die completely. Here's what nobody tells you. That nightly ritual of charging to 100%, it's actually one of the worst things you can do to your battery. And those battery percentage recommendations you keep seeing, keep it between 20% and 80%, aren't just random numbers. Some engineer pulled out of thin air. There's real chemistry happening inside your phone that makes those numbers matter more than you'd think. In the next 15 minutes, you're going to understand exactly why pushing your battery to 100% accelerates its death. You'll learn what's actually happening at the molecular level inside that tiny brick keeping your life running. And you'll walk away knowing how to make your phone's battery last not just months longer, but potentially years longer. Because once you understand what's really going on inside a lithium-ion battery, you can't go back to treating it the same way. Let me paint you a picture. It's Sunday night, you've got work tomorrow, your phone's sitting at 45%, which is plenty to get through the night, but you plug it in anyway, because that's what you do, right? You charge it overnight, every night. You wake up, it's at 100%, and you start your day with a full tank. Seems perfectly logical. Your car works better with a full tank of gas. Your laptop runs longer when it's fully charged. Why wouldn't you want your phone at 100% capacity? But here's what's actually happening while you sleep. Your phone hits 100% around 2 a.m. Then it just sits there, plugged in, maxed out, for 5 more hours. And inside that battery, at the microscopic level, there's a war happening. Chemical reactions that wouldn't normally occur are being forced to occur. Structures that should be stable are under stress. And with every night you do this, you're shaving days, weeks, maybe months off your battery's total lifespan. And this matters because your phone isn't just a device anymore. It's your alarm clock, your wallet, your camera, your connection to everyone you care about. When that battery starts dying faster, it's not just inconvenient. It's anxiety-inducing. You start planning your whole day around outlet locations. You stop taking photos because you need to conserve battery. You can't use GPS on a road trip without your phone dying halfway through. Apple and Samsung will charge you $89 to replace that battery. Or you'll just upgrade early, spending another $800 or $1,000 on a new phone. But what if you could avoid that entire cycle just by understanding what's really happening when you charge? So here's what's really going on. Inside every lithium-ion battery, you've got 2 electrodes. There's the anode on one side and the cathode on the other. Think of them like 2 slices of bread in a sandwich. And between them, there's this liquid electrolyte, that's your jelly or peanut butter, that lets lithium ions flow back and forth. When you charge your phone, you're forcing lithium ions to move from the cathode to the anode. When you use your phone, those ions flow back the other way, releasing energy. It's like a crowd of people moving between 2 sides of a stadium, back and forth, back and forth. That movement is what powers everything you do on your phone. Now, when your battery is at a normal charge level, say 50% or 60%, this process is pretty chill. The lithium ions have plenty of space to settle into the anode structure. They slide into these little pockets in the graphite layers, nice and organized, everything's stable. But when you push that battery to 100%, you're cramming way more lithium ions into the anode than it's comfortable holding. It's like trying to stuff one more person into an already packed elevator. Sure, you can do it, but everyone's uncomfortable. Things are under stress, and if you keep doing it, something's going to break. There's this phenomenon called lithium plating, and it's one of the sneakiest ways charging to 100% destroys your battery. Here's how it works. When you're charging at lower levels, those lithium ions intercalate into the graphite anode. That means they slide between the layers of carbon atoms like sheets of paper in a binder, nice and organized. But when the battery's nearly full and you keep pushing more charge into it, the anode gets saturated. There's no more room in the graphite layers. So instead of intercalating, the lithium ions start plating onto the surface of the anode. They form this metallic lithium layer, like frost forming on a window. And metallic lithium inside a battery is bad news, really bad news, because that plated lithium is chemically reactive. It can react with the electrolyte and form compounds that don't conduct electricity. It creates resistance. Plus, metallic lithium can grow into these dendrites, tiny needle-like structures that can puncture the separator between the anode and cathode. If that happens, you get an internal short circuit. And if you're unlucky, that's when batteries catch fire. Even if you never get a fire, that plated lithium is basically dead weight. It's lithium that's no longer participating in the charging cycle. It just sits there, permanently stuck. Which means less lithium is available for future charges, which means your battery capacity drops, which is why your phone dies faster after a year of use. Think about it like this. Imagine you've got a parking lot with 100 spaces. Every day, 100 cars come and go. Park, leave, park, leave. The system works great. But now imagine every day one car parks incorrectly. It takes up 2 spaces or blocks another car in. Over time, you've got fewer and fewer usable spots. Eventually, you can only park 80 cars instead of 100. That's lithium plating. It permanently reduces your battery's capacity. And here's what makes this particularly frustrating. Lithium plating happens most aggressively when batteries are charged to very high voltages, like, 100%. The higher the voltage, the more likely ions are to plate instead of intercalate. So every time you charge to full, you're dramatically increasing the chances of permanent damage. Now, lithium plating isn't the only thing happening. There's also this issue of thermal stress. Batteries generate heat when they charge. That's just physics. Chemical reactions produce heat, but the rate of heat generation increases significantly at high states of charge. When your battery is between 20% and 80%, it's charging relatively calmly, the heat generation is manageable, your phone can dissipate that heat without much trouble, but as you approach 100%, the charging process becomes less efficient. More of the electrical energy you're pumping in gets converted to heat instead of chemical energy storage, and heat is the enemy of lithium-ion batteries. Here's why heat matters so much. Inside that battery, you've got this solid electrolyte interface layer. Let's just call it the SEI layer. It forms naturally on the anode during the first few charging cycles. And it's actually important. It protects the anode from degrading too quickly. Think of it like a protective coating, like the seasoning on a cast iron pan. But here's the thing. That SEI layer is temperature sensitive. When the battery gets hot, the SEI layer breaks down faster. It becomes thicker and more resistive, which means the battery has to work harder to charge, which generates more heat, which degrades the SEI layer more. It's a vicious cycle. And guess when your battery gets hottest? When it's charging at high states of charge. Like when you're pushing it from 90% to 100% and then keeping it there all night, you're literally cooking your battery's protective layer, making it permanently less efficient. This is why your phone gets noticeably warm when it's charging overnight. It's not just working hard, it's actively degrading itself. And every hour it spends at 100% while plugged in is another hour of unnecessary stress on the internal chemistry. Your brain doesn't naturally think about this, because in almost every other area of life, full is better than empty. You don't put half a tank of gas in your car and call it good. You don't half charge your electric toothbrush. More is always better, right? But lithium-ion batteries aren't fuel tanks. They're chemical systems with complex stress points. And our intuition fails us because we can't see the chemistry happening inside. We judge the battery by its external behavior. Does it power my phone or not? Without considering the internal degradation accumulating with every charge. There's also this misconception about battery cycles. People talk about lithium-ion batteries having a certain number of charge cycles before they die. Maybe 500 cycles or 1,000 cycles depending on the battery. And people hear that and think, okay, so if I charge less frequently, my battery will last longer. But that's not quite how it works. A charge cycle isn't every time you plug in your phone. It's the equivalent of charging from 0% to 100%. So if you charge from 50% to 100% one day, then from 50% to 100% the next day, that's one full cycle, not two. The math adds up over time. What actually degrades your battery isn't the number of cycles. It's the voltage stress, the thermal stress, and the chemical reactions happening at extreme states of charge. A battery that cycles between 30% and 70% will outlast a battery that cycles between 10% and 100%, even if they both go through the same number of total cycles. Because the one staying in the middle range never experiences the extreme stress that causes permanent damage. Think about someone training for a marathon. If they run at a moderate pace every day, they can train for months without injury. But if they sprint at maximum effort every single day, they're going to blow out their knees in a few weeks. Same total distance covered. But the intensity matters more than the volume. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus is one of those guys who's really into tech. He's got the latest iPhone, the latest MacBook, always upgrading. And Marcus follows the conventional wisdom. Every night before bed, he plugs in his iPhone, charges it to 100%. He wakes up, unplugs it, goes about his day. And he's religious about it. Never misses a night. Marcus also has this habit of using his phone while it's charging. He'll plug it in and immediately start watching YouTube or playing games, which is fine, right? It's charging. What's the harm? Here's what Marcus doesn't realize. When you use your phone while it's charging, especially while doing something intensive like gaming or video streaming, you're creating a perfect storm for battery degradation. The phone is generating heat from the charging process, and it's generating heat from the processor working hard. Those two heat sources combine, and now your battery is sitting at 100% charge while also being hot, which accelerates every degradation pathway we've talked about. After about 18 months, Marcus notices his battery health has dropped to 82%. His phone barely makes it through a workday anymore. He's carrying a charging cable everywhere. He's planning his day around outlets. And he can't figure out why his buddy's iPhone, same model, bought the same month, still has 91% battery health. Now compare that to Jessica. Jessica bought the same iPhone as Marcus, same month, same everything. But Jessica does something different. She read somewhere about the 20 to 80 rule, and she decided to try it. She charges her phone during the day, unplugs it around 80%, and doesn't stress if it drops to 20% before she charges again. Jessica's not obsessive about it. Sometimes she charges to 90%, sometimes she lets it drop to 15%. But on average, she's keeping her battery in that sweet spot between 20% and 80%. She's not charging overnight, she's not keeping it plugged in when it's full, and she's definitely not gaming while charging. 18 months later, Jessica's battery health is still at 94%. Her phone lasts just as long as it did when she bought it. She's not carrying charging cables. She's not thinking about battery anxiety. And she's planning to keep this phone for at least another year, maybe two. Notice what's different here. It's not that Jessica has more willpower. It's not that she's more disciplined. She just understands the pattern. She knows that keeping the battery between 20% and 80% reduces voltage stress, minimizes heat generation, and prevents lithium plating. And because she understands the chemistry, the behavior change feels easy. It's not a sacrifice, it's just common sense. Here's what most people don't realize. The 20 to 80 rule isn't actually about those specific numbers. It's about avoiding the extremes. Because the damage to lithium-ion batteries isn't linear, it's exponential at the ends of the charge range. Charging from 20% to 80% causes minimal stress. The battery is operating in its happy zone. But charging from 80% to 100%, that last 20% causes disproportionate damage. And sitting at 100% while plugged in, that's when the really aggressive degradation happens. Same thing on the low end. Letting your battery drop to 5% or 0% regularly stresses it in different ways. The anode can become unstable. The voltage drops so low that the battery protection circuits might kick in, And deep discharges can cause copper from the current collector to dissolve into the electrolyte, which permanently damages the battery. So the 20 to 80 rule is really about keeping your battery away from the danger zones. Think of it like driving. You can technically drive your car with the gas light on, or you can floor it everywhere you go. But neither of those things is good for your engine. Keeping your battery between 20% and 80% is like driving at a reasonable speed with a quarter tank to 3/4 tank. You're not stressing the system, you're operating in the zone where everything works efficiently. And once you see it this way, everything changes. It's not about following rules or being restrictive. It's about understanding that your battery is a living chemical system that responds to how you treat it. The people who get years of life out of their phone batteries don't have special devices. They're not using magic charging cables. They understand the chemistry. They know that a battery at 70% charge sitting unplugged is healthier than a battery at 100% charge sitting plugged in overnight. They know that avoiding heat is more important than maximizing capacity. They know that the convenience of waking up to 100% isn't worth the cumulative degradation over months and years. So here's what we've uncovered. Charging to 100% isn't just harmless overachieving. It's active harm. You're forcing lithium plating at the anode. You're generating excess heat that degrades the protective SEI layer. You're creating voltage stress that accelerates every chemical pathway, leading to capacity loss. And when you keep your phone plugged in overnight at 100%, you're compounding all of this for hours at a time. Plus, there's the way extreme charging interacts with heat, and how deep discharges stress the anode. All of these mechanisms connect back to one central truth. Lithium-ion batteries live longest when they stay in the middle of their charge range. Not at the extremes, not constantly topping off to 100%, not letting them drain to zero. In the middle, where the chemistry is stable and the stress is minimal, this isn't about being perfect. You don't need to obsess over every percentage point. But understanding this pattern gives you power, because now when you see your phone at 85%, you don't feel compelled to charge it. When it's at 25%, you know you're still fine. You're not operating on anxiety and arbitrary rules. You're operating on chemistry. The question isn't whether you can keep your battery healthy. The question is whether you'll recognize the extremes when they show up. Because now you know what happens when you push to 100% night after night. You know what lithium plating does. You know why heat matters. You can't unknow it. So next time you reach for that charging cable before bed, ask yourself this. Is my phone actually low, or am I just following a habit? Because keeping it in the middle isn't restrictive, it's liberating. You're no longer a slave to the outlet. You're working with the chemistry instead of against it. And that makes all the difference.